Hi, this is the 158335 Internet of Things Creative Design Project for Group 11. The current problem I have is that my garage door clicker has a limited RF range on it and I'm unable to trigger it from within my house. This means that if it's raining I have to walk all the way over to the garage to open the door. Or if I'm down at the end of my driveway, I'm unable to get the garage door to open. What I need is a way of triggering the garage door from a very long distance away, say from the end of my driveway or underneath the carport here, without relying on the limited radio frequency range of my clicker. A cloud-connected Internet of Things garage door opener would help me to achieve this. Because I live in the country and my house is some distance away from the garage, Wi-Fi or some other means isn't an appropriate way to connect it up. So the 3G coverage here out in the countryside, and that's ubiquitous to New Zealand, will be used to help me connect to the garage. Here I am, this is where my mailbox is and where my car is. This is where I'd like to trigger my garage door from. Unfortunately it's too far away and I can't get the garage door to trigger from this distance away, so it would be desirable to have another way of opening the door. As you can see, at this distance away from the garage door, the remote control works. Unfortunately, this means I have to be standing in the rain or I have to wait in my car for the garage door to open instead of driving directly in. Unfortunately, I have a lot of difficulty getting in contact with my group to organise and work on this project together. I ended up building the prototype by myself and on about the 11th of April I requested from Kuda and Hans to complete the project on my own, and so that's why the only person you'll be seeing in this video is me. Okay, this is an outline explanation of how my Raspberry Pi garage door opener works. First we have our user here with their smartphone. They will browse to the Remoted website where they will authenticate, which gives them access to the Remoted device page. The Raspberry Pi here is running VNC, SSH, Python, a Flask web server, and the Flask web server is hosting my door control web page and the garage control Python script. I'm using Weaved Connected to create a dynamic VPN tunnel between the Raspberry Pi itself and the Remoted site. I can't use a local web server on the Raspberry Pi itself because I'm connected to the internet using a hotspotted cell phone, which means I don't have port forwarding or any other tools available to me, or a static IP to allow myself to actually host and authenticate against the internet. So in this case I'm using Weaved Connected to connect to my Raspberry Pi and extend its virtual environment onto the internet, and I'm using the authentication based on the Remoted website to then access these services. So the user on their smartphone will browse to the Remoted website, then browse to the device page, and then access the door control website or SSH or VNC depending on what they want to do. They will then use that to trigger the garage control Python script that will send a command through the GPIO board to the garage door opener. I'll now demonstrate how that is set up actually using walking through the Raspberry Pi Remoted website and showing you online how that's done. Okay, now I'm going to show you actually how my Raspberry Pi is connected to the internet and the ins and outs of how the system is configured. So as we can see, I'll just show you here locally that I am actually on a local IP, so this is running on my home internet, so you can see I'm 192.168.1.104, so that's a private IP address connected to the internet. On the right hand side here you can see the remote at website, so I'm going to sign into this. And you can see that it's brought up the Massey Raspberry Pi device that I'm running. So I'll click into this. It's connected to the internet via that local 3G connection. I now have a range of options. So first I'll log into SSH. This will then provide me with the ability to see internal to the device and configure it. So I'll just copy that and bring it up in a separate window. I'm now authenticating against the Raspberry Pi. And it showed me that I'm online with the Raspberry Pi. So now what I need to do, before I can start actually interfacing with the garage door controller, I need to start running the Flask web server. Okay, and just to show you, I'm not connected over a local area network. You can see that I'm connected up 172.20.10.3, so that's a different private IP range that's being provided by my iPhone. So in here is all of my files, including the garage door controller Python script, which then start the Flask server. So I'll simply run Python . And now you can see that the Flask controller has started and it's listing on 0.0.0.0 port 5000. Back through my remoted page, I can now access the Flask server, which is looking for HTTP on port 5000. The remote then provides me a one-time link, and you can see as it's presenting the web page to my web browser, you can also see the associated GET request down here on the actual Flask server. I now click Trigger Door here. So you'd have a think about it. You'll see the GET request, and then outside you can see that, well, you can't see it, but my garage door is now open. So I can return home, present me with the front page again, or I could choose to trigger the door again. Okay, and that's just a description of how the garage door opener itself works. Okay, I'm now going to describe the individual components of the system. As you can see, this desk here will be removed for the actual implementation because it's not actually useful having a desk in the middle of your parking garage. You can see the large yellow cable running up to the garage door opener. This is the garage door opener itself, and you can see in the expansion ports that I've utilised the accessory and ground cable, which then runs down to my GPIO board, where I've poorly spliced them onto the GPIO and I've connected them to port 5 and the ground port. On the desk itself, I have the Raspberry Pi sitting on the desk. I have an iPhone which is providing a local Wi-Fi hotspot. This is required as I don't have a 3G modem stick for the Raspberry Pi itself. Finally, I've got the computer in the interface, and you can see at the moment the Flask server is running, hosting my Python script and the HTML pages for the garage door interface. Okay, what we have in front of me here is the remoted website, which is how I'm going to access the web server on the Raspberry Pi. You can see that my iPad is running on 3G only, and I'm not connected via Wi-Fi locally to the device. So I'll sign in. Okay, I've now entered my credentials and I'm logging in. This now brings up a page where I can see that my Raspberry Pi is online and has both an internal and an external IP address. I'll now choose the device and choose that I want to access the Flask server on port 5000. I'll then touch confirm. And it opens up the Flask server in a new tab. It now shows me my local Internet of Things garage door opener and the Pythons and HTML scripts and pages that I've got running on the Flask server. You'll see the hyperlink in the center that says trigger the door. I'll now touch this to trigger the activation of the garage door. It now says the garage door is triggered. And you can see that the garage door is closed. If I want, I can now select I can now trigger it again by touching the link. And the door triggers again. So we're now just back at the end of the driveway. Again, I'm just going to prove the point. I have the web interface again open on the device. I'm just going to click trigger door. It's now telling me that the door is triggered, and as you can see down there, you'll see that the garage door is indeed closing. Some of the other Internet of Things garage door devices that are out there, there's one commercially available project called Garadot. This was an all-in-one device that connected to your garage door opener. However, it didn't have an open source firmware and didn't integrate with a lot of the popular home automation systems out there. It also required on its own closed connection to the internet, and you were forced to use the creator's own web portal and app. This device is different in that it hosts a web server and allows you to connect through any different number of means, and it's presented, the interface is just HTML, so any smart device can access it. I've seen another device on the Internet of Things website which uses a Raspberry Pi that broadcasts its own Wi-Fi SSID. That is useful, however you're range limited to the distance away from the Raspberry Pi. I chose to use 3G as, given the distance from my letterbox to the Raspberry Pi, Wi-Fi wouldn't connect, and 3G would essentially let me trigger the Wi-Fi, trigger the garage door from anywhere.